Welcome to the Public Ethics Commission's Lobbyist Registration Training. My name is Jelani Killings, an ethics analyst with the PEC. This training is intended to provide a general overview of the Lobbyist Registration Act and the local requirements for registered lobbyists. Please note that this training is intended to be advisory only and is not a substitute for legal advice. The Oakland Lobbyist Registration Act regulates individuals engaged in lobbying activity related to decisions by the City of Oakland. The significant features of the Act include that lobbyists are required to register with the Public Ethics Commission annually. Lobbyists must also file quarterly reports detailing their lobbying activities. In addition, lobbyists are limited in giving gifts or payments that benefit Oakland officials. Lobbyists can be banned or penalized for failure to comply with the Act. Lobbyist registration and reports are submitted to the Public Ethics Commission. Please note that the Public Ethics Commission is the administrative body that receives lobbyist filings, provides education and advice, and enforces the Lobbyist Registration Act. If you have any questions about your obligations under the Act, contact Public Ethics Commission staff. How is lobbyist defined? Under the Lobbyist Registration Act, a contract lobbyist is an individual who receives or is entitled to receive $1,000 or more in compensation in a single calendar month to communicate with any public official for the purpose of influencing an action by the city. An in-house lobbyist is defined as an individual whose duties as a paid employee, officer, or director of any corporation, organization, or association include communication with any public official for the purpose of influencing an action by the city. If an individual falls into one of these two categories above, they must register as a lobbyist with the Commission before attempting to lobby Oakland public officials. Both contract and in-house lobbyists have identical filing requirements under the Lobbyist Registration Act. Who qualifies as a lobbyist? Under the Lobbyist Registration Act, an employee who plans to communicate their employer's opposition to a proposed decision under consideration by a city commission to a member of that city commission would be required to register as a lobbyist. However, an unpaid volunteer for a nonprofit organization who meets with a member of a city board on the organization's behalf would not be required to register. In addition, a resident who talks to a city public works employee on behalf of a neighborhood association to get a stop sign placed at a busy intersection does not qualify as a lobbyist, unless that person is being paid $1,000 or more or is a paid employee, officer, or director of the neighborhood association. Lobbying activities. Lobbying includes any communication, whether direct or through agents, with any public official made for the purpose of influencing any proposed or pending action of the city. Under the Lobbyist Registration Act, an agent is a person acting on behalf of another person. However, members of the public who are asked to contact public officials regarding a specific issue are not considered agents of the person making the request. This practice, commonly referred to as grassroots lobbying, is not covered by the Act. A government action can also include a decision to refrain from action, delay action, or delay considering a matter. Only ministerial actions by the city, like decisions requiring no discretion or judgment, are excluded. When considering lobbying activity, requesting a variance to the city's zoning laws for a new development qualifies as lobbying and may require the person to register and file reports as a lobbyist. In addition, attempting to influence the award or terms of a contract with the city by communicating with an elected official or member of any city board or commission qualifies as lobbying and may require the person to register and file reports as a lobbyist. The following actions are not considered lobbying activity. 1. Public officials acting in their official capacity. 2. The publication or broadcast of news, editorials, comments, or paid advertisements that urge government action. 3. Persons who have been specifically invited by a city official or employee responsible for conducting the hearing or making a decision to give testimony or information to assist the body or person extending the invitation. 4. Attorneys, architects, or civil engineers whose attempts to influence government action are limited to appearance at, preparation for, or conversations with city employees about a public meeting, public hearing, or public proceeding. 5. Persons who without extra compensation and not as part of or in the ordinary course of their regular employment present the position of their organization when that organization already has a registered lobbyist. 6. Designated representatives of employee organizations engaged in collective bargaining negotiations regarding employment terms and agreements. 7. Participation in a public bid, proposal, and/or contract award process. However, this exception does not apply to communication with an elected official or member of any city board or commission. 8. Contracts with representatives of the Oakland Unified School District, including trustees, administrative staff, and faculty. Under the Lobbyist Registration Act, applying for a business license or library card does not qualify as lobbying because issuing a business license or library card is a ministerial act. In addition, setting up a website that opposes a proposed ordinance does not qualify as lobbying because the person has not communicated with a public official. As a reminder, grassroots lobbying is not covered under the Lobbyist Registration Act. Lobbyists are required to list the clients on whose behalf they lobbied in their quarterly reports. So who counts as a lobbyist client? For an in-house lobbyist, the lobbyist employer is the client. For a contract lobbyist, the person or organization that hires the contract lobbyist is that lobbyist client. The client is the person or organization for whose benefit the services of a lobbyist are being performed, the real party in interest. However, a person is not a client if they are simply a member of an organization that is represented by a registered lobbyist. Lobbyists are required to register with the Commission and pay the applicable registration fee before beginning any lobbying activity. A local governmental lobbyist registration is valid for the duration of the calendar year in which the local governmental lobbyist registered, unless the local governmental lobbyist terminates their registration. To register, a lobbyist must provide their name, employer or lobbying firm, contact information, and client information. The lobbyist must also include all clients that have a pending interest before the city, regardless of how much the individual client pays the lobbyist. A lobbyist hired by a network of people or organizations should register all individuals or organizations who are a part of that network as clients unless the network exists as its own legal entity. In addition, the names of all clients and/or employers must be current and amended registration submitted as necessary. Lobbyists are also required to re-register annually during the month of January and pay the applicable registration fee for that calendar year. Please note, registration only lasts for that calendar year, so even if a lobbyist files their initial registration mid-year, the lobbyist must still re-register in January the following year. If a lobbyist does not re-register during the month of January and pay the applicable fee, their registration will be automatically terminated effective December 31st of the previous calendar year. At the time of registering, the local governmental lobbyist must pay an annual registration fee of either $500 if the local governmental lobbyist registers between January 1st and June 30th, or $250 if the local governmental lobbyist registers between July 1st and December 31st. The local governmental lobbyist shall re-register annually during the month of January, and at that time shall resubmit the required information and pay the $500 annual registration fee for that calendar year. If a local governmental lobbyist does not re-register during the month of January and pay the applicable fee for their registration, they will be automatically terminated effective December 31st of the previous calendar year. Fee reduction and waiver eligibility. Lobbyist registration fees will be reduced for a local governmental lobbyist who is a salaried employee, officer, or director of any corporation, organization, or association that receive less than $200,000 in gross receipts or gross income in both the corporation, organization, or association's current tax year at the time of the local governmental lobbyist registration and in the prior tax year, and is exclusively representing that corporation, organization, or association. The Public Ethics Commission will reduce the registration fees to $100 if the lobbyist registers between January 1st and June 30th, or to $50 for a local lobbyist who registers between July 1st and December 31st. Lobbyist registration fees will be waived for a local governmental lobbyist who is a salaried employee, officer, or director of an organization or association that is exempt from taxation under 26 United States Code sections 501c3 and that receive less than $750,000 in gross receipts in both the organization's current tax year at the time of the local governmental lobbyist registration and in the organization's prior tax year, and is exclusively representing that organization. The Public Ethics Commission may require that a local governmental lobbyist submit proof of an employer's gross receipts or gross income to receive the fee reduction or fee waiver as part of the local governmental lobbyist registration or any time thereafter. A lobbyist of a chapter of a nonprofit or association may receive a fee waiver or fee reduction if all of the following are true. 1. The chapter is clearly presented to the public as being a chapter of the nonprofit organization or association. 2. The chapter has different leadership from the nonprofit organization or association. And 3. The chapter has its own budget and pays for the lobbyist's salary or lobbying expenses out of the chapter's budget. Oakland lobbyists use the Commission's OakApps lobbyist registration and reporting system for all filing requirements, including registration, quarterly reports, annual registration, renewal, and termination. If you need assistance setting up your OakApps account or filing your registration or disclosure reports, please contact the Public Ethics Commission. In addition to initial registration and annual renewal, lobbyists must file quarterly reports that disclose all clients and lobbying activities during each calendar quarter. Lobbyist quarterly reports must be filed the last day of the month following the end of the calendar quarter in which the lobbyist is registered or should have been registered. A registered lobbyist must file all quarterly reports even if there is no reportable activity during the quarter. The Public Ethics Commission can impose a late filing fee of $10 per day after the deadline until the information is received by the Public Ethics Commission or the fines reach $1,000. Lobbying activity that must be disclosed. A lobbyist must report all contacts with city officials when seeking to influence a decision on behalf of a client or employer. A lobbyist must report every government action that they are paid to influence, along with the name of their client or employer. They must also include the name, title, and department of every city official that they contact. All reported contacts must include a description of each position advocated by the lobbyist on behalf of the client. A lobbyist must report when they or one of their clients employ any city officeholder, candidate, city employee, or their immediate family member. The report must include the name of the person hired, a description of the services performed, and the total payments to the individual. A lobbyist must also report if they are employed by any city officeholder, candidate, city employee, or their immediate family member. The report must include the name of the city official or candidate who hired the lobbyist. It must also include a description of the service performed and the total payment made to the lobbyist. A lobbyist must report any person or organization that they asked to make a campaign contribution to a city officeholder or candidate. The report must include the name of every person that the lobbyist asked to make a campaign contribution. It must also include the name of the officeholder or candidate, including any committee or fund that the request benefited. A lobbyist must report the request even if it does not result in a contribution. Lobbyists who have terminated all activities requiring registration during a calendar year must notify the Public Ethics Commission. Once a person notifies the PEC, they have no further obligations under the Act unless they begin lobbying again. If a lobbyist wishes to begin lobbying Oakland officials again after terminating their registration, the lobbyist must re-register with the Commission. As a reminder, lobbyist registration only lasts for the calendar year. So if a lobbyist does not re-register and pay the applicable fee, their registration will automatically terminate effective December 31st of the prior year. The Lobbyist Registration Act prohibits lobbyists, clients, contractors, and persons doing business with the city from engaging in certain activities. The following section summarizes types of activities prohibited by the Lobbyist Registration Act. Please consult the Act for specific details and a complete list of restrictions. Lobbyists, clients, contractors, and persons doing business with the city may not take any action that places a city official or employee under personal obligation to the lobbyist, client, contractor, or person doing business with the city. For example, a lobbyist may not make a monetary loan to a city employee. In addition, a lobbyist may not make an investment in a city project in exchange for a favorable vote by a city council member on future legislation. A lobbyist, client, contractor, or person doing business with the city may not attempt to deceive a city official or employee regarding facts about a government action, whether that is pending or proposed. In this case, a lobbyist may not provide false data that supports their position on pending legislation. A lobbyist may not cause or influence a government action for the purpose of creating future lobbying business for the lobbyist. For example, a lobbyist may not influence the introduction of legislation when the lobbyist hopes to be later retained to promote or oppose that very legislation. A lobbyist may not attempt to create a false appearance of public favor or disfavor of any government action. In addition, a lobbyist may not cause any communication to be sent to a city official or employee in the name of any fictitious person or in the name of a real person without that person's consent. For example, a lobbyist may not submit a letter in support of a proposed development on behalf of a neighborhood group that does not exist, or on behalf of a neighborhood group that does exist without that group's consent. A lobbyist may not represent that they can control or obtain the vote or action of any city officer or employee. That means a lobbyist may not tell a potential client that council member A will vote however the lobbyist tells that council member to vote. Lobbyists and their clients may not make payments to or incur expenses for any officeholder, candidate, employee, or family member thereof that exceeds $240 in any single calendar year. This restriction includes gifts, honoraria, and any other form of compensation, but does not include political contributions. For example, the client of a lobbyist is prohibited from giving the mayor's spouse a $300 ticket to a musical concert. In addition, the city's Government Ethics Act prohibits a restricted source from giving a gift with the value of $50 or more to a city official or employee. A restricted source means either a person doing business with or seeking to do business with the department of the public servant, or a person who during the prior 12 months knowingly attempted to influence a public servant in any legislative or administrative action. It is also important to note that the city's Government Ethics Act restricts gifts in any amount when foreseeable the public servant could be influenced by the gift in a performance of an official act. The Oakland Campaign Reform Act prohibits a person who contracts with the city from making contributions to candidates and city office holders. The restriction applies until 180 days after the completion or termination of negotiations for such a city contract. For entities such as organizations or businesses, the restriction applies to anyone authorized to represent the entity before the city regarding the contract, and this includes a paid lobbyist. Before making a campaign contribution, a lobbyist must determine the end of the contract period to avoid breaking the law. Under the Oakland Campaign Reform Act, commencement of negotiations for city contracts occurs when a contractor or contractor's agent formally submits a bid, proposal, qualifications, or contract amendment to any city official, or when a city official formally proposes submission of a bid, proposal, qualifications, or contract amendment from a contractor or contractor's agent. The completion or termination of negotiations occurs when the city executes the contract or amendment, or when the contract or amendment is not awarded to the contractor, or when the contractor files a written withdrawal from the negotiations. For example, a lobbyist was hired by a local business to help the business get selected for a city contract. The lobbyist cannot contribute to a city candidate until 180 days after the completion or termination of the negotiation period has ended. A city officer, department head, or budget director may not act as a lobbyist for 2 years after leaving office. This restriction applies to the mayor, city administrator, city council members, city attorney, city clerk, city auditor, and executive officers and members of city boards and commissions. For general members of a city board or commission, they may not engage in lobbying for 1 year after leaving their board seat. However, they may speak on their own behalf in support of a proposed ordinance. Recent amendments to the Lobbyist Registration Act went into effect January 1st, 2024. Significant changes include lobbying fee schedule. The Lobbyist Registration Act now requires lobbyists to pay an annual registration fee of $500 if the lobbyist registers between January 1st and June 30th, or $250 if the local governmental lobbyist registers between July 1st and December 31st. The Lobbyist Registration Act also provides for the annual registration fee to be reduced or waived for lobbyists that meet the fee waiver or reduction requirements. Changed reporting dates. Quarterly disclosure reports are now due no later than the last day of the month following the end of the calendar quarter. Per diem late fees. If any lobbyist fails to submit any information required by the Lobbyist Registration Act after any applicable deadline, the Public Ethics Commission will impose a late filing fee of $10 per day after the deadline until the information is received by the Public Ethics Commission or the total amount of late fees reaches $1,000. Mandatory training. A lobbyist must complete the PEC's lobbyist training within 60 days of the lobbyist's initial registration. Thereafter, local governmental lobbyists must complete any additional training sessions as required by the Public Ethics Commission. The Public Ethics Commission may invalidate a registration for failure to comply with the training requirements. Persons who violate the Act are subject to administrative and criminal penalties. The Commission's complaint procedures and complaint forms are available from the Commission and are posted on its website. The Commission is responsible for enforcing the Act and is authorized to impose administrative penalties of up to $1,000 for each violation. In addition to potential for administrative penalties, any person who knowingly or willfully violates the Act is guilty of a misdemeanor. No person convicted of a misdemeanor violation of the Act may act as a lobbyist, advise a client, or otherwise attempt to influence a government action for compensation for 1 year after the conviction. Thank you for taking the time to view and complete this training. If you have any questions about your responsibilities under the Lobbyist Registration Act, please reach out to our advice and assistance line at 510-238-3593 or by sending an email to ethicscommission@oaklandca.gov. We also have additional resources for lobbyists, including our Lobbyist Registration Guide that you can download on the Commission's website. Once again, thank you for taking the time to complete this training and for helping us to build a transparent Oakland.